Imagine this. You wake up one morning and stare at your reflection. At first glance, you see what you expect: your face, your eyes, the person everyone knows. But something is off. The longer you look, the more you realize you don't recognize the person staring back at you. Not because your features have changed, but because you can't find yourself in that reflection. You see a body, a name, a story you've been told to repeat. But who is behind the mask? Now imagine walking through a crowded street, watching people as they pass. Each person locked inside their own head, eyes glued to their phones, faces frozen in expressions they think they're supposed to wear. Smiles that don't reach the eyes, conversations that mean nothing. And suddenly, you feel it, the haunting sense that everyone is playing a role and no one remembers who they are. But here's the terrifying part. Maybe you're one of them. Think about it. When was the last time you did something because it was truly you, and not because it was expected, demanded, or applauded? When was the last time you acted without a mask, without the fear of rejection or judgment? Or have you been chasing shadows, images of yourself crafted to please others, to fit in, to be successful in a world that doesn't even know what success is? What if your whole life has been a performance? Stop for a moment and let that sink in. Every choice, the clothes you wear, the words you say, the way you laugh. What if none of it is really you? What if you've spent so long pretending that the real you has faded into a ghost, a shadow you barely remember? Imagine this. You're standing on a stage, in front of an audience that claps and cheers. But behind the curtain, when the lights go off and the applause fades, you are alone with a deep emptiness. Because all that cheering was never for you. It was for the mask you wear. And here's the deepest question of all. What if you don't even know who you are without the mask? What if you've worn it for so long that you've become a stranger to yourself? This is not just your struggle. It's the silent epidemic of modern life. We live in a world that tells you who to be, what to look like, what to want, what to fear, what to chase. From the moment you're born, you are given a script. Be nice, fit in, make everyone like you. Don't be too much, don't show weakness. And so, you obey. You play the part. You hide what you feel. You become what the world wants. But with every smile that isn't real, with every word you speak that isn't your truth, with every dream you sacrifice because it doesn't fit the script, you lose another piece of yourself. Until, one day, you look in the mirror and realize that you are hollow, a shell, a collection of roles, masks, and expectations. And you can't remember the last time you felt alive. But here's the cruelest irony. We are told that if we follow the script, we will find ourselves. If we become what others want, we will be loved. If we wear the mask perfectly, we will finally be enough. But what if the mask is what's killing you? What if everything you've been taught to chase is the very thing that keeps you from yourself? Nietzsche saw this long ago. He warned us of the danger of becoming what you are not, of living a life crafted to please the herd, while your real self is suffocated beneath layers of lies. So ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Who are you beneath the roles, the masks, the fears? And if you can't answer that, if you hesitate, if you feel an emptiness where your self should be, what does that mean? Have you been chasing a shadow, a false image of yourself, so long that you've forgotten who you really are? But here's the paradox. To find yourself, you must first admit that you are lost. You must stand in the darkness of your own emptiness and stop running. And maybe that's why most people never find themselves, because they are too terrified to admit they are lost. But what if getting lost is the beginning of being found? What if only by tearing off the mask and standing naked in front of yourself can you begin to see who you are? If you feel that emptiness, if you've ever looked in the mirror and seen a stranger, you are not broken. You are not alone. You are simply at the beginning of a journey most people will never dare to take. The journey to find your lost self. But to take that first step, you must understand what made you lose yourself in the first place, how the world and your own fear taught you to hide. And that is what we will confront next. Because until you see why you are lost, you will never know how to find your way back. So how did this happen? How did you become a stranger to yourself? How did the real you get lost in a maze of shadows? To answer that, we must go back Back to the beginning, to the quiet moments when the world first taught you to hide. Imagine a child, wild, fearless, unfiltered. A child who screams when angry, laughs without restraint, cries openly when hurt, and dreams boldly without shame. That was you. You weren't born afraid of yourself. You weren't born doubting your worth or censoring your feelings. But then the world began to speak. And its words were sharp, subtle, and deadly. Don't cry. Don't be angry. Be good. Act like everyone else. Don't be difficult. Each time you showed a part of yourself that didn't fit. Each time you expressed something raw and real. You were corrected, silenced, and shaped. Not because people wanted to hurt you, but because they were afraid of their own truth, too. So you learned. You learned that to be loved, you had to be someone else. You learned that parts of you were wrong, too much, unacceptable. You learned to wear the mask. And the longer you wore it, the more real it began to feel. Carl Jung, one of the great minds of psychology, called this the persona, the mask we create to face the world. It's not always fake, sometimes it's necessary to survive. But when you start to believe that the mask is you, you lose touch with your real self. And everything that doesn't fit the mask? All the rage, sadness, longing, fear, and desire that you were told to hide? It doesn't disappear. It gets buried deep in what Jung called the shadow. The hidden part of yourself that holds all the truths you were too afraid to face. But here's where it gets dangerous. The more you reject the shadow, the more it controls you. It shows up in quiet moments. The emptiness you feel when you're alone. The anger that bursts out when you least expect it. The envy of people who live freely while you remain trapped. And the world around you? It's built to keep you trapped. We live in a culture that feeds the mask. A culture of constant performance. Smile for the camera. Post the right picture. Say the right thing. Be likable. Be marketable. But never, ever be too real. Because if you are real, if you show your raw, untamed self, you risk rejection. And rejection feels like death in a world that tells you belonging is everything. So you stay in line. You laugh at jokes you hate. You agree with things you secretly despise. You nod while your soul screams. Because being accepted feels safer than being yourself. But here's what Friedrich Nietzsche would say. He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises. Think about that. Even when you betray yourself, some part of you knows it. Even when you wear the mask perfectly, your soul remembers that you're lying. And that's why you feel that emptiness. Because you are not living as yourself. You are playing a role that was handed to you. By parents. By society. By fear. But Nietzsche saw this coming. He saw a world where people would be so desperate to avoid discomfort, so hungry to fit in, that they would give up their own will. He called it the age of the last man. The last man is not a hero. The last man is the person who seeks nothing higher, who avoids every struggle, who lives for comfort and safety, but has lost all meaning. Does that sound familiar? You've been taught to chase comfort, to avoid pain, to be nice, to not offend, to not risk. But comfort kills you slowly. Because while you're busy trying to avoid pain, you are also avoiding life. Arthur Schopenhauer, the philosopher of will and suffering, said, "Mostly it is loss which teaches us about the worth of things. And that includes the loss of yourself." Maybe that's why you feel lost. Because you've never really been allowed to live as yourself. You've only been allowed to live as what the world expects. But here's the secret. The self you lost is still there, hidden beneath the layers of fear, masks, and lies. It's buried, but it's alive. And when you see that, when you realize that you are not what the world has forced you to be, you start to feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Because if you can lose yourself, you can find yourself again. But to do that, to start that journey, you have to be willing to face the shadow. To face the truth of who you are. Not the polished version. Not the one who says all the right things. But the real you. The one who feels, fears, loves, rages, and dreams. The question is, are you ready to see that person? Because until you do, until you are brave enough to face the shadow, you will keep chasing shadows in the world outside, hoping that something out there will fill the emptiness within. But nothing out there can give you what you've lost. Because what you are looking for has always been inside you, buried, but waiting to be found. And now, if you are willing to face the truth, we can begin to see what happens when you don't, when you live forever trapped behind the mask. Because the price of staying lost is greater than you think. And that is what we will uncover next. So what happens when you live like this? When you spend your life chasing shadows, hiding behind masks, and running from your real self? The answer is more terrifying than you think. Because this isn't just an internal struggle. It shapes everything: your thoughts, your relationships, your choices, and ultimately, your entire existence. Let me show you how. The slow death of authenticity. When you wear a mask long enough, you forget it's a mask. You start to believe that the fake smile is real. You start to believe that the person who agrees with everyone else's opinions is you. You start to believe that fitting in is the same as belonging. But deep down, your real self knows the truth. Every time you silence your real thoughts, every time you hide what you truly feel, every time you play a role that isn't you, a piece of you dies. Not suddenly, not all at once, but slowly, over time. Like a tree that stops growing because its roots are suffocating underground. And that's why you feel hollow. That's why no amount of success makes you feel fulfilled. Because success means nothing if you lose yourself to get it. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But what no one tells you is this. The cost of not accepting yourself is even more terrifying. Because when you reject who you are, you reject your own life. The false life you build. Here's another consequence. When you don't know who you are, you build your life on lies. You choose relationships not based on love, but on fear, fear of being alone, fear of being seen. You choose careers not because they give you meaning, but because they give you approval. You choose friends not because they share your soul, but because they accept the mask you wear. And what happens when everything in your life is built to serve the false self? You feel trapped. Because even if your life looks good from the outside, inside you are suffocating. You look around and realize, none of this is real. None of this is me. Imagine standing in a house you've built for years, only to realize it was never your home. That's what happens when you build your life on a mask. And it leads to something even darker. Addiction to escape. When the emptiness becomes too much to bear. When you feel that quiet ache of not knowing who you are. What do? You escape. And modern life makes it easy. Scroll for hours. Binge the next show. Swipe on endless faces. Drink. Smoke. Shop. Work. Anything to avoid sitting alone with yourself. But here's the trap. The more you escape, the more lost you become. The more you avoid your real feelings, the deeper they bury themselves. And the emptier you feel. Gabor Maté, who studied addiction deeply, says, "The question is not why the addiction, but why the pain." And in your case, the pain comes from losing yourself. The addiction is not just to substances, it's to avoidance itself. To anything that keeps you from facing your own soul. And so, you stay stuck in a cycle. Hide. Escape. Feel empty. Escape again. Relationships without depth. Now think about your relationships. How real can your connections be if you're always hiding? If no one knows who you really are? If you never speak your truth? If you always show them the mask? How can anyone love you if they've never seen the real you? And this is the quiet heartbreak of living as a shadow. Even when people love you, deep down, you know they don't really love you. They love the role you're playing. They love the person you pretend to be. And so, even surrounded by people, you feel alone. Because no one knows the real you. And maybe, just maybe, you don't either. Anxiety and depression, the unseen symptoms. Here's something even darker. When you reject yourself long enough, when you live disconnected from your truth, your mind and body rebel. That emptiness? It turns into anxiety. The fear that at any moment your mask will slip and people will see the real you. That sadness? It turns into depression. The deep sense of hopelessness that maybe you'll never find yourself again. Because how can you feel alive when you're not living your life? How can you find joy when every day is a performance? Nietzsche said, "Invisible threads are the strongest ties." Think about that. The threads of fear, shame, and hidden truth. They bind you tighter than any chain. You carry them everywhere. To work. To relationships. Even in your own mind. And unless you cut those threads, you will stay bound. The death of meaning. And perhaps the most painful consequence of all. Life itself starts to feel meaningless. Because meaning comes from living as yourself. From speaking your truth. From standing for what you believe. From loving and creating with your whole soul. But if you've buried that soul, if you've silenced that voice, what's left? An empty life of going through the motions. Doing what's expected. Waiting for something, anything, to make you feel alive again. But nothing outside will ever give you what's missing inside. And here's the truth no one wants to face. If you don't live as yourself, you're not really living at all. You're a shadow. A ghost. Haunting a life that doesn't belong to you. But it doesn't have to stay this way. Because once you see the trap, once you see the mask for what it is, you can begin to break free. You can begin the journey back to yourself. But make no mistake, it will not be easy. Because the path to yourself runs through everything you've been running from. Through the shadow. Through the pain. Through the fear of being seen as you are. And that is where we must go next. Because if you want to find yourself again, if you want to stop chasing shadows and start living, you must be ready to rebel against everything that made you lose yourself. And that rebellion, that is where the search for your lost self truly begins. So now you see the cost of living a life that isn't yours. The emptiness. The loneliness. The quiet desperation of always wearing a mask. But what if I told you that you can break free? That beneath all those layers of fear, shame, and expectation, the real you is still there, waiting to be found. But here's the truth. To find yourself, you must be ready to rebel. Not a rebellion against others, but a rebellion against the prison you've built inside yourself. Against the voices that tell you to be small. Against the rules that keep you trapped. Against the fear that says, if they see who I really am, they'll leave. Because here's the first secret to breaking free. You will never find yourself by staying safe. Step 1. Stop running from your shadow. Remember the shadow? All the parts of you you've hidden because you thought they were unacceptable. Your anger. Your sadness. Your wildness. Your deepest desires. You cannot be whole until you face them. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." If you want to find yourself, you must stop running from the darkness inside you. You must sit with it. Listen to it. Understand it. Because in that darkness are the keys to your freedom. Every piece of you that you've rejected is a piece of your power. Your anger? Maybe it's the part of you that knows when something is wrong. Your sadness? Maybe it's the part that still longs for something real. Your fear? Maybe it's been trying to protect you, but now it's time to let it go. You don't heal by pretending to be good. You heal by facing everything you are. The first act of rebellion is to stop lying to yourself. Sit alone. No distractions. No masks. And ask, what have I been running from? What am I afraid to feel? What do I really want? Write it down. Say it out loud. Let it be real. Because once you face it, it loses its power to control you. Step 2. Speak your truth, no matter the cost. Here's the second step. Speak your truth, even when your voice shakes. Because as long as you hide your truth, as long as you say what others want to hear, you will stay trapped. Nietzsche said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe." And it's still true. But if you want to live as yourself, you must be willing to stand alone. Start small. Say what you really feel to someone you trust. Say no when you want to say no. Say yes when you want to say yes. And then go bigger. Speak the truth that scares you. Tell people how you really feel. Tell the world what you really believe. And yes, some people will leave. Some people will reject you. But here's what's worse. Living a life where no one knows you, not even you. Wouldn't you rather be rejected for who you are than loved for who you're not? Because the people who truly love you, the ones who are meant to walk beside you, they can only find you when you are real. So let them see the real you. Let them choose. And if they walk away, let them go. You were never meant to stay small just to be loved. Step 3. Choose your own path. The third act of rebellion? Choose your own life, even if no one understands it. Because so much of your suffering comes from living a life that was handed to you. A life built on should. You should get this job. You should be this kind of person. You should want this. But what do you want? Strip it all away. Forget what they expect. Forget what looks good on paper. Forget what will make others proud. And ask, if I lived only for myself, what would I choose? If I stopped pretending, what would I become? And then start walking that path. You don't need permission. You don't need a roadmap. You don't need anyone to understand. Because it's your life. Nietzsche said, "No one can build you the bridge on which you, and only you, must cross the river of life. It's your bridge to build. No one else can walk it for you. So stop waiting. Stop hoping someone will save you. Stop thinking someone else knows better. Trust yourself enough to choose. Step 4. Accept the pain of becoming real. Here's the hardest part. It will hurt. Taking off the mask will feel like ripping off your own skin. Because you've worn it for so long, you think it's part of you. But the pain is part of the process. You are being reborn. And birth is never easy. You will feel lost. You will feel scared. You will doubt yourself. But keep going. Because on the other side of that pain is freedom. The freedom to finally breathe as yourself. The freedom to speak your truth without fear. The freedom to love and live without hiding. But only if you are willing to walk through the fire. The rebellion is the beginning. So this is the rebellion. Face your shadow. Speak your truth. Choose your path. Embrace the pain. And as you do, you will find pieces of yourself you thought were gone forever. You will remember what it feels like to be alive. But this is just the beginning. Because once you start walking as yourself, once you tear off the mask, you will face the greatest truth of all. A truth that will change everything. And that is what we will uncover next. The final, most powerful realization waiting for those brave enough to find themselves. So here we are, at the edge of everything. You've seen what it means to be lost. You've seen the cost of chasing shadows. You've begun to see the rebellion that could bring you back to life. But now comes the ultimate truth, the one realization that changes everything. And it's not what you think. You see, all this time, you've been searching for your real self. You've imagined that if you dig deep enough, if you peel away all the layers, one day you'll find a fixed, perfect version of you, solid, unchanging, waiting to be discovered like treasure buried under the earth. But here's the truth that no one tells you. There is no fixed self to find. What? Yes. Let that sink in. There is no final version of you, fully formed, waiting in some hidden place. Because you are not something you find, you are something you create. You are not a noun. You are a verb. You are becoming, always. And that is the most terrifying and the most liberating truth you will ever face. You are a constant act of creation. All this time, you were chasing a shadow because you thought there was a true you hiding under all the masks. But what if the only thing hiding there is possibility? The possibility to choose. The possibility to change. The possibility to become. And that's why Nietzsche said, "Man is something that shall be overcome." You are not finished. You are not final. You are a work in progress, and that's exactly how it should be. You've been trying to find yourself like you would find a lost object. But you are not an object. You are a creator. A creator of yourself. Of your life. Of your meaning. Think about that. You don't find yourself, you build yourself. With every choice. With every word you speak. With every moment you decide to be real instead of hiding. That is the power you didn't know you had. Because if you are not something fixed, if you are not bound by some hidden true self, then you are free to become anyone you choose. And yes, that's terrifying. Because it means there is no one to blame. No fate. No destiny already written. No final version of you guaranteed to emerge. It means you are responsible for who you become. But isn't that what you've always wanted? To be free? The freedom and terror of being a creator. Most people don't want that freedom. It's too heavy. It's easier to keep chasing shadows, to keep searching for a self that never arrives. Because that way, you don't have to choose. You don't have to take responsibility for creating your life. But if you've made it this far, if you've dared to walk through the darkness, if you've dared to strip away the mask, then you are ready for this truth. You are the artist. Your life is your masterpiece. And every day you choose, every day you act with truth and courage, you are shaping who you are. You are not here to find yourself. You are here to create yourself. Imagine that. What if your real self is not something hiding, but something waiting for you to build it? What if the life you've always dreamed of is not waiting to be uncovered, but waiting for you to make it real? The power to choose right now. So let me ask you, who do you want to become? Not who others expect. Not who you've been pretending to be. Not even who you were yesterday. But who do you choose to become right now, in this moment? Because here's another secret. You don't have to wait. You don't need permission. You don't need to find yourself first. You can choose to start creating yourself right now. You can choose to speak your truth right now. You can choose to take off the mask right now. You can choose to stop chasing shadows right now. Nietzsche said, "Become who you are." But he didn't mean find who you are. He meant create it. Forge it. Will it into existence. You are not a shadow. You are not a prisoner of your past. You are not trapped in the lies the world told you. You are the creator of yourself, and that is the greatest power you will ever hold. The final choice. So now the question is, will you keep chasing shadows? Running from yourself? Hiding behind masks? Waiting for a life that will never come? Or will you start creating? Creating a life built on truth. Creating a self built on courage. Creating meaning, love, and purpose, not because someone gave it to you, but because you chose it. Because in the end, that's what it means to truly live. To stand up and say, "This is who I choose to be. This is my life, and I will create it, no matter what it costs." And when you do that, when you stop chasing shadows and start walking as yourself, you will finally be free. Free from the lies. Free from the fear. Free from the prison of trying to be what you are not. And in that freedom, you will find something greater than any mask, any shadow, any false life. You will find yourself not as something hidden, but as something you have the power to create, moment by moment. So now, I ask you, right now, as you read these words, who will you become? Because no one else can decide. No one else can give you that life. It's yours to create. And that is the final, most powerful truth. You are free. You always were.